I'm out and about shooting today with the pink machine, the Lumix GF7. So I'm going to give this a full review as part of my tiny camera series. However, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that there are a plethora of very similar tiny Lumix cameras that you can choose from if you're looking for a more affordable everyday carry. There's loads of options. I'll go through all the differences of all the different models throughout this video, but for now I will concentrate on the GF7. I've been out and about in Manchester today taking it for a spin, and it has a lot of qualities that I look for in a cheaper everyday carry. It's small, of course, and we do have a flippy screen. It was designed for selfies, but I quite like using it to sort of shoot from the hip, so you can be a little bit more incognito when you're out shooting street photography. There are quite basic features. There's no EVF, there's no IBIS, but it does have the things that I value. So you have a touch screen. It has a micro four thirds sensor, which means we can put a plethora of different tiny lenses on it. It shoots RAW and it has full manual settings, so you do get a lot of creative control and a lot of dynamic range in the images themselves. One more thing just to talk about usability is the GF7 does have what I've coined as the spinny wheel of doom, meaning you don't have a front dial or a back dial to change your aperture and shutter speed priority. All you need to do is use this spinny dial on the back. It does take a little bit of getting used to. It's not the worst thing in the world. In more expensive cameras, I would much prefer to have actual dials, and it's one of the reasons I really like the GM5 because it does have a dial on the back. But for like everyday carry, more entry-level cameras, it's not the end of the world, but it is a little bit annoying. There's also a few bells and whistles, nothing too crazy, but you do have time-lapse features, and you do also have Wi-Fi as well. So if you're out and about shooting and want to share some photographs pretty quickly, you can do that with this sort of camera. And you know, it's cute, it's tiny, and comes in fun colours, which is very important to me, if nobody else. And for the tiny camera series montage, we do have a pop-up flash. Amazing. In terms of holding the GF7 and using it, it's very, very comfortable. They've moved the recording button out of the way of my right thumb, which is great, so I don't hit it by accident like I do all the time on the GM5. I like the back because it's got like a rubberized grip at the back as well. It's quite nice and it's color coordinated with the rest of the camera. So even though it's cheaper, I do think it is a good looking camera. So why do I rant and rave about these styles of tiny cameras? I've got several of them now. I'm a bit of a collector, in case you hadn't noticed. And in fact, some of my favourite images of all time have been taken with this exact style of tiny camera. There are a fair few differences between the models, but they're more similar than they are different, to be honest. For example, the GM5 has an EVF, and the GM1 is the smallest micro four thirds camera ever made. I've got dedicated videos on all the cameras that I'm mentioning, by the way. I think sort of lumping them together, I wanted to talk about the similarities and the benefits of buying something small and affordable in general. So let me just take you through the range quickly so you know what to look for if you're having a bargain hunt. First of all, we have the GM line of Lumix cameras. So you have the GM5 and the GM1. These are considered the premium high-end tiny cameras, with the GM5 probably being the most premium tiny camera ever made. To be honest now, this range, you are looking to pay a little bit more than you should for these because they are quite scarce. In terms of what you can do with them, you could get a GX800, for example, and you would get exactly the same image quality, if not slightly better, because it's slightly newer. So the GM, premium. Next, we have the GF line. So this is the GF7. There is a GF5, a GF6, yada, yada, yada. The bigger the number, the newer the model. They are very, very similar for all intents and purposes. The GF line is below the GM line. So this is more everyday use. This is more for beginners back in the day. You will get your hands on these much, much cheaper because they were much more mass produced. And then finally, because Lumix don't like to do anything in a non-complex way, we have the GX series. The GX series is essentially the same as the GF series, it's just taken over from that point. So the GX series is the most modern tiny camera series that Lumix did. So if you find a GM, a GF or a GX, you can't go far wrong. They're all pretty similar. They're all small form factor, they're all fun colours, they'll have a touchscreen, they'll have Wi-Fi, they'll have interchangeable lenses, so you can get lots of cute tiny micro four thirds lenses for it. There are differences along the specs, which you can research in my dedicated videos, but if you're on a bargain hunt, these three ranges of cameras are a great place to start. So what do I love about them in particular? Because I have a lot of tiny cameras and I do keep coming back again and again to this range. I love how easy to use they are and how user-friendly they are. And despite them being a little bit older, the menus are quite modern looking, quite intuitive, and they do everything I need it to do, and it's all easily accessible as well. Some older cameras do struggle with more convoluted menu systems, but the Lumix system from the very, very start hit the ground running. And that's why I think you get quite a lot of bang for buck with older Lumix cameras, because they're very, very similar. They just sort of made a style that looked nice and worked very, very well. And they've tweaked it over the years, but largely it's stayed the same. Another huge benefit of every single one of these Lumix cameras is if you have a prime lens on, you can navigate the whole thing one-handed because the power buttons are all on the right and you only need to use it one-handed because you don't need to move the lens. When you're out and about shooting everyday carry sort of things, day-to-day life or street photography, having a camera that you can use quickly and only use with one hand, I think is really, really valuable. And I think for everyday carry cameras, there is something to be said for something that just does the job. Like, this might just be me, let me know in the comments what you think, but like I'm reviewing the X100-6 at the moment, the Fujifilm. This is arguably the most sought after everyday carry camera that's ever been made. Yet I'm out and about getting photographs with this little dude instead right now. And that's for a number of reasons. I think when I'm shooting everyday carry, in terms of settings, I like to keep things very, very simple. I just like to have something in shutter speed priority so that I know that what I'm shooting will be frozen in motion. And then I would like a little bit of creative control over where the focus point is, and usually that's on screen with single point autofocus. Both of these cameras can do it. They're polar opposites in many, many ways. One of them's like 100 quid, one of them's 2,000 quid. But in terms of what they add to my day-to-day life as an everyday carry, the crossover is pretty huge. Now, I'm not saying in terms of specs that they're directly comparable, because obviously the Fujifilm is a larger sensor, it's a more modern camera, etc., etc. Full video on the way if it's not out already. But what I mean is, you don't need anything too complex to add photography into your day-to-day life. And I think there is actually a benefit to having a cheaper camera in day-to-day life. Let me explain. These cameras, particularly the GF series, which are very, very cheap. I don't remember exactly how much I got it for, but it wasn't more than £200. It was very, very cheap. I will take this out anywhere. I will lob it in my bag. I will leave it on the side. I will take it out in drizzle and in rain. I will use it and abuse it. I do think technology is there to be used. When I'm out with the X100-6, for example, it is on loan. So, like, obviously I don't want to break it because it's not my property. But even if it was, especially if it was, I wouldn't want to scratch it. It's a luxury high-end camera and I wouldn't want to tarnish it. I feel like I'm wrapping it up in sort of bubble wrap when I'm using it. Like I took it to a gig, I watched Busted, they were great, and it started raining and I hid the camera underneath my coat and I was afraid of getting it out in case someone spilled a drink on it or something. I don't want to get it scratched. These blooming things, they're already scratched, they're already pre-loved. So if I add another scratch to this, then it's just adding character as far as I'm concerned. I would like my everyday carry to be robust enough that I can use it in all situations, but I don't have to worry about potentially breaking it. So affordability. Granted, the Lumix GM5 is a little bit spenny. They're quite hard to come by, but the GF series and the GX series, I maintain you can still find them for a very good price if you look around. Sometimes under £200, sometimes around £300, anything more than that, and it's probably not a great deal. At that price point, you can throw it in your bag and you can forget about it. It's there to use and abuse and scratch and gain character. You can also get a collection of really affordable lenses as well. I've got a dedicated video on my favorite tiny lenses, and I love with the Micro Four Thirds system that you can make it as small or as large, as portable and basic, or as big and professional as you want. It's such a versatile system and I don't think there is a system like it anywhere else. And for everyday carry stuff, these small lenses and small affordable bodies really do spark joy. So obviously I'm an everyday carry photography fanatic. I love to keep a camera with me every single day. And I would highly recommend anyone who wants to get into photography or get better at photography to do the same. Now, there's an obvious reason for this, you know, the good old cliche, the best camera you have is the one that you have with you. But there's a lot more to it than that. And I think there's an element to this everyday carry stuff that people don't often talk about. I watched an interview with Roman Fox. He's a street photographer and a YouTuber, and he's really talented.
In most cases, what separates successful photographers from not successful photographers isn't talent. It's how many hours they've put in. And even when I had a job, every time I would leave my house, I'll have a camera with me.
Just like with most things in life, the more practice you get and the more hours and dedication you put in, the more you get out, the better you become. I don't believe that photography has this sort of divine artiness where someone's just born amazing at photography. Obviously, some people are naturally more gifted than others, but it largely comes down to hours in my opinion. Now, that can be daunting if you're picking up photography as a hobby. You know, dedicating a full weekend or a full week away to your hobby is a lot of investment of time. We all have lives to live, we all have commitments. But what if you had a camera that could be with you every day and we could just chip away at it? What if every time we walked to work, we tried to find a composition on the way? What if we chipped away at our practice time, a half an hour here, 10 minutes here, throughout every single day, and we were just thinking about photography more? I firmly believe that that is how the everyday person gets better at this. So it has to come in little moments. And I maintain, after having an everyday carry camera with me literally every day of my life for years now, there's a ton of benefits. First of all, you're capturing your memories, you're capturing the moments in your life, and you're creating art in everyday moments, which I think is a beautiful practice. But we're also consciously, a child just jumped out of a bush. But we're also consciously thinking about photography a lot more. So I used to walk from the train station to where I used to work, for example, and it would be headphones in, head down, half asleep, don't look up, don't take anything in. But then when I had my camera with me, it became more present. I was more present in the moment, and I was watching, and I was more aware of my surroundings, and I was looking for compositions, and I was there in the moment thinking about how to capture it best. It's such an underrated thing. I think we can sleep through life. When we're walking around in our own little world, in our own little bubbles, a camera really does enable me to be present in the moment and capture what I want to see. Even if the photographs are pants, it doesn't necessarily matter. It served its purpose for me being more observant, me thinking about photography and thinking about the compositions that you see in day-to-day life. That's the snowball effect that having an everyday carry camera gives you. We're every single day getting better at our craft. And that is why I would recommend the GF7 or something similar as well, because the everyday carry for me, it needs two things. It needs to be something that you're happy to take out every day in a number of situations. It could be a little bit drizzly, it could be going to the most boring place in the world. Whatever it may be, you have to be comfortable to roughhouse your equipment a little bit, in my opinion. And then the second thing is it has to be user-friendly enough to give you a really positive experience. And if you can enjoy your camera and you don't mind taking it out and about in inclement conditions, now we have a perfect everyday carry. We're not going to leave it at home because we're afraid of breaking it or afraid of it getting stolen. It's going to be with us, it's going to be documenting, and it's going to be getting us better at photography. And at that point, that's when we can rejoice and put the camera gear down, and it starts to be more about the photographs. And that's what all this should be about. I hope you enjoyed my little philosophical rant. This isn't how the video was supposed to turn out at all. I just had these thoughts on the train when I was heading out here, and I think sometimes we all do get bogged down with gear a little bit too much. At the end of the day, it's a tool to get us all better at our craft, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. So check out all of these cameras in my Tiny Camera series. I will link them in the description, and hopefully one of them will tick the right set of boxes for you, and we can have some fun taking photographs every day of our lives.